Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey, the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the idea guy, Morgan. All right, Russ. So I had another experience with Adler. I don't know what it is about this kid. I have 5, but this particular kid, I don't know if it's because she's number 4 in order, but she's just kind of prompting my brain and my heart in ways that I just haven't really experienced otherwise.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay, so she's the one, when I was driving her to work or to school one day, she just asked me that question, Dad, do you have to go to work today? And it just got me like fired up about, no, I don't want to have to say yes.
Right.
I want to say, no, what do you want to do today, sweetheart? Let's go do something. But I couldn't. And then today, I went to her school for her Valentine's party. Now, granted, we're doing this in February and it's not going to come out until later. But when I walked in the door and she saw me, her face lit up like it was just fireworks. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, this is a picture of financial freedom.
All right, real quickly, I want to hear more of the story, but here, paint the room for me. How many moms are in the room?
Oh, I was surrounded by them.
Okay, so pretty
Cougars.
much.
I'm
I'm not talking about that. Come on, we're keeping this a family show. How many kids, moms, out of everyone?
I mean, no, not all of them.
Okay,
but probably 8 out of 12.
8 out of 12. How many kids' dads other than you were there?
1.
See, that's the picture there.
It's a game changer.
Is that there was 4 moms who couldn't make it, and there was 11 dads or 10 dads or whatever that couldn't make it.
Yeah, and the other part is, so then I'm starting to talk to the teacher, and she's like, she has not stopped telling me all day, my dad's coming. My dad's coming to this party. She's like, I know, Adler. I know. You told me that. Actually, you just literally told me that like minutes ago. And I mean, literally the whole party is her sitting around with her friends, eating Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets, some chips, and a little cupcake. I mean, but she just couldn't be happy.
It's just time for you to share with it. That is financial freedom. You went and posted that picture in the community too, which was adorable. I love your question. Talk about your question.
Well, I just said, you know what? This all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, man, this is a picture that represents financial freedom. For me to be able to go and not worry about having to clock out, not having to worry about, asking for time off, or did I take too much vacation? Did I take too much sick day time, whatever? Does this fall in this bucket? No, I could just leave. I could go and I could make her day. And so I posted and I said, what's a picture? I was like, man, wonder what other people have as a picture that represents to them their motivation, their drive towards this. And man, I mean, you guys just came out and just posted some awesome, awesome stuff.
There's some really cool things in here. And Joey, I want to challenge you as you're listening to this right now to go in. I want you to post.
First of all, join the community if you haven't.
I thought that was a given.
It should be by now. Go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com now. Like, pause this thing, go in there, join for free.
Or go straight to the App Store if you want to. Wealth Without Wall Street.
That's
join.
Right. That's
right. Either way, you get in the community and immediately now you get to start interacting with people. But I want you to go find this post from Joey. So the post was on February the 13th, and Joey posted in there, what does financial freedom look like for you? Tell me about the picture.
Yeah, it's just a picture of me with my little 5-year-old daughter. She's smiling bigger, like her teeth are just like 90% of the picture or something like that. But it just says, what picture can you post that represents financial freedom for you? So go and do that.
Yeah, I want you to post in that, what does financial freedom look like for you when you hear this? let us know, one, you're listening, and two, what does it look like for you? So that way, one, that's an accountability measure.
No
That's
doubt.
something that helps you see that. Because when you post that, that just tells you everything I do going forward. And you're great at this with me, Joey, is every time I come up with another idea, you say, okay, wait a second. Is this going to create more freedom, or is it going to take away freedoms? Are we going to have to work harder or longer because of this? And I always appreciate you doing that. And that's really why I'm so excited about this interview today. We're bringing on a guest um, uh, to the show, someone that has become a member, part of the family, if you will,
Yeah.
for the Wealth Without Wall Street clan. He's taken action. I love the way that he shared how they took control, how they picked a path, and they are getting closer to financial freedom. And this is something you're going to get to hear as we interview Sid Christensen today.
Yeah. So Sid started engaging with our brand about 18 months ago or less. It hadn't even been that long. And it just was honestly just through a video, then to our podcast, then to taking action to setting the foundation with infinite banking and saving his cash more efficiently. And then subsequently leverage that into a path that he could see how he could create passive income through this land flipping through Mark Podolsky's The Land Geek system. And now I'm not going to give it all away. We can't give it away, but their lives have been transformed. His family, one, he's added a new child just recently, but man, how different is life for them?
It's huge. I was excited to hear all the stories. We asked a bunch of questions from a consumer standpoint. This land flipping, you and I have talked a little bit about it. We've obviously had Mark Podolsky on our podcast a couple of times, so we're fired up about this personally. But just to hear somebody who's doing it. So if you've wondered, like, how does this work from someone who's just doing it, that's what this interview is about. We asked a lot of questions, but at the end, the real cool part of it was just him sharing how creating passive income streams is making a difference in their family's life, how it's truly adding time to their day with their kids. And that's what, I mean, just like your time with Adler there, it was just an awesome experience. I'm sure for her, I know it was for you. And as you're listening to this, we want to see what financial freedom looks like for you. So remember, don't forget, post in the community what financial freedom looks like for you. And make sure to listen in to the rest of this episode as we join Sid Christensen. Okay, I've listened to at least 5 podcasts. I'm now an expert in the infinite banking process. Maybe not, but yet I would love to talk to somebody about it. How can they do it, Joy?
It's as simple as going to freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. You can sign up for a short 15-minute call to see if this is a fit for you. And you can work with one of our coaches to financial freedom. Welcome into the show. We have Sid Christensen on the line, man. Welcome to the show, Sid.
Hey, how's it going?
Sid, you didn't know that Joey was so awkward in interviewing people that he that's the way he opens every interview. Every interview.
It's a gift.
It really is. How are you doing, man? Good to see you today.
Yeah, doing good. It's good to see you guys.
Well, yeah, we got to spend some time with you, Sid, when we were out of San Antonio at the land flipping event, boot camp. And I was just so impressed by your story. And Joey and I were like, man, we got to get Sid on the podcast. More people need to hear about what he's doing. So I want to kind of go back to the beginning of the story, though, because when you were asked by Mark to get up in front of the group and kind of share your story, you kind of led on that there were some things that happened of how you found out about both the Land Geek and us. So tell us a little bit about how you learned about Wealth Without Wall Street.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about this. My story kind of really begins like way back in high school when my friends were asking me what I wanted to do with my life. And I just told them I didn't know. And then one answer I just said is, I'm just going to make money. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make money. That's all. That's what I'm going to do.
Brilliant.
And so that kind of led me down this journey. I studied different things, investing, and I made a few mistakes here and there, lost money. And about, I think it was 2015, I got looked into this universal life insurance, and I got a policy because I have a rich uncle. So I asked him about money, and he said this is what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I bought one, and it was about 4 years. I was paying the yearly premiums in it, and it's about 4 years ago. I started listening to Dave Ramsey, and he hates whole life insurance. And so I took a little taste of that water that he was sharing, and I'm just like, I don't know about this whole life business. So then I went and looked at other sources, and that's when I found your famous video, Russ, of Dave Ramsey's wrong about life insurance. And I'm like, well, I remember right where I was. I was loading trucks in an excavator, and I just kind of had some downtime. So I thought, well, I'll listen to that, and I watched the video. And then after that, I was like, Wealth Without Wall Street, who are these guys? And I started listening to the podcast, and then I'm like, that makes sense. I really like what you guys are talking about, passive income, and using these life insurance policies as your own bank. And that kind of resonated with me. And I didn't like the idea of having my money in the stock market. It made me nervous. And I feel like this is a lot safer route to go. So I think it was October 2018 that happened. And I think November I got hooked up with Joey, and we bought 2 policies, one on my wife and one on me, and started paying into those. And then I started listening to your podcast. You talked about the land flipping thing with Mark Podolsky, the Land Geek, and I looked at that and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So
well, Joey and Russ are kind of weird. Mark Podolsky's kind of weird. Okay, I'm starting to see a trend. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thinking, oh, that sounds like too much work, and I just thought it was just weird, and I wasn't sure about it. So I thought, well, I'm gonna buy a rental house. That's what I decided to do. But in the back of my mind, I was still curious about it. And then a year ago, about from today, in February, first week of February last year, 2019, I like to snow bike. And a snow bike is a motorcycle with a snow track on the back of it. And we take them up in the mountains and, tear through the snow. And my brother, we went up on a Thursday, and my brother and I were riding around just kind of boondocking in the snow. And the trees were snow packed, so you couldn't really see around them. And he came and T-boned me on my left side. We didn't see each other, and it happened so fast. And I broke my leg. His bike actually totaled. My bike only had a little bit of damage. It was all done on my leg. Oh, and I had to lay in the snow. They went to try and call I don't know who you call, Lifeline, to come get me, because there was no way that I was moving out of there, with a broken leg. Yeah. So they called Lifeline. It was about 3 hours. I was sitting in the snow trying to stay warm. Just in a little bit of pain. Well, a lot of pain.
You're fairly numb, I would assume, at that point, though.
Yeah.
You didn't have to ice it down, it sounded like.
Yeah. Yeah, I was getting cold. And anyway, I don't think I was that close to death, but I thought about a lot of my family and the time that I've spent with them, and how, a lot of this time I've been working in a way. And then I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I can't work with my leg. And so that's when I started, I can start looking into this Land Geek thing. And that's really what I thought of when I was laying in the snow. Like, well,
you're sitting there laying in the snow, broken leg. You're like, pissed. My brother, he did this to me.
By the way, real quick question. Is your brother the beneficiary on any of these policies?
No.
Okay. I just want to clear the air on that. Okay, just making sure.
Right, so he's clear from any conspiracy on this. Yeah. So you're laying there, and are you saying literally you thought, I need to look into this land flipping thing?
Yeah, I was like, well, I have a lot of time on my hands now all of a sudden, because I won't be working. So I was like, well, I can look into that, and maybe that will get enough passive income. I can get my wife working, that she could be a stay-at-home mom, and at least that. And then maybe one day I could, be home more and around more and not have to work as much for a living.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I want to get to that story. I want to kind of talk about where you've gone to, but let's talk about, so you and your wife have how many children?
We have 2 boys and 1 little new girl.
That's awesome. So yeah. So talk about that as a dad. Like you mentioned the fact that as you're sitting there laying on the snow, you're thinking about all the stuff that's happening. Obviously, your mind starts to think about what if, I'm sure. And, thankfully it was nothing more than a break. I'm sure that wasn't great, but you mentioned the time away from kids and how that's impacted you. I feel like we all feel that, but when you have an event like that, I can only assume it's been accentuated.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's so important that your family has a mom and a dad in the family, and you have different things that you do, and you can kind of decide on that in your relationship. But I remember my dad was always able to take me camping and do the outdoors things, and I always wanted to do more with my dad growing up. And I mean, he was a great father, and we always did things. And I work with him right now, and then I just thought of like, wouldn't it be great to be able to spend more time with my boys as they are small
Yeah.
and growing up, instead of later in life when I'm have more money. I'd
Yeah.
rather have that time now to spend with my family versus later, and take them on trips and just have those experiences earlier in life rather than later.
Yeah.
And I also think it's really helpful for when your family grows up, at least my boys and my now new girl, to have those both influences of mom and dad in the home, helping them grow up. 'Cause, I mean, this world is crazy, and I don't know. I want to be there to protect them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you're talking about this because Russ and I were actually just in the last couple of days, we've been talking about how the Wall Street mindset and really what is kind of all around us, media and everything else, is teaching us ways to defer what we would call retirement or that freedom that you speak of until a point where we really can't have those experiences that you're talking about. Like those are past. And so we were just bringing up this idea of like, man, why is it that we, for the most part, have bought into this idea that has to be deferred? And so for you, what made you think, hey, it probably is possible for me to spend more time today. I just got to get creative about it. Like what was there anything that you can recall that maybe prompted that?
I think it's just I've always been interested in money and having it work for me. I just never knew how to do it. I've seen people, like my rich uncle. He goes on these trips, and they spend a lot of time with their family. And his kids are good. They're good boys and girls that he's raised up. And um, I don't know. I've always been interested in having my money work for me, and I just I just a step by step process that led me here. Just one thing after another. I can't really picture or think of one like thing that's happened other than I guess breaking my leg. That was probably the biggest thing that happened to where I don't know. I don't know if it was like Heavenly Father saying you have now time to look at this or something. I'm not sure.
So your kind of moment to where you've gone from, man, I want to find ways to be in the home, my wife to be in the home. You have this crash, right? You'd heard about the land flipping thing. So one, I'm going to just commend you for the fact that you were listening to a podcast that was opening up your mind, right? Opening up opportunities. You said you started off thinking that you were going to go down the long-term rental space. What was it about that you decided, well, wait a second, well, maybe that's not a perfect fit. Maybe I should go down this land flipping thing. How did you decide that for you?
Well, I really don't. You could buy one rental for $20,000 down. That's how I looked at it. $20,000 down. You could buy one rental and eventually own that rental once the loan's paid off, and rent it out and have your tenants pay that off. And I think that was going to get. I looked at like $6,000 after everything about every year. That's a bonus $6,000 of passive income. But I looked at the land flipping thing, and I saw that it could get a lot more faster and sooner. So I think that's why I had more interest in that, and I realized I had more time to devote to it, because I knew the land business was going to take more time than just buying a home. But I think I just allowed myself to take that time to learn about it. And so I pushed the brakes on the home. I was really actually almost to buy a home for rental, and I just pushed the brakes on that and went into land.
So you started the land flipping back in February, March of 2019, correct?
Yes.
But talk about that process. What exactly did you do?
Excuse me. Now, what was that? Sorry.
Tell us about, you started doing land flipping in, say, March 2019. Take us through that process. What did you do?
So I called Scott Bossman. He's like I guess the first marketer for Mark, or he explains like what it is and talks about the toolkit and flight school.
Yeah.
And so I had all this time on my hands, and so I'm like, well, I'm going to jump right into flight school. And flight school, I think, was like a week later. So I'm like, holy cow, I better get on this. I better, do this, because while I have this time, I can take flight school and learn about it. So that was my first step. Is I jumped into flight school and started taking the flight school classes and just started taking action on what Scott Todd was teaching. And it takes a little bit to figure it out. I think for me, I'm a farmer, construction worker. I don't really spend a whole lot of time with computers. And so that was a learning curve for me. But every morning I wake up, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning just to get a few hours of land business work in or learning before I go off to my, real job. But
yeah, so you talk about that. So you joined flight school, which that's something that Tracy in our office has done with Joey and I say with us really loosely. Recently, she's done it. We sort of watched a few recordings.
Yes.
But that's a 14, 16 week process. And so you went through that process, and you're going through it with probably 15, 20 other people. Is that the way yours was set up?
Yeah, roughly about 15 to 20 people. And
so talk about that experience, because again, people have been listening to the Land Geek. They've heard him on our show a couple of times, and obviously he's excited about it. He sells all this stuff, right? So let's hear it from a consumer side, though. You went through it. What was your experience like?
So I think you could figure everything out by yourself. There's enough information out there to figure it out, but I think part of the problem is there's too much information, and there's too many rabbit holes to get lost in or sidetracked in.
Yeah.
And so by taking flight school and looking at Mark's toolkit, it really honed in on the things that are most important to focus on, and then work on those things that would move the needle rather than trying to figure it out. Although there's a lot of figuring out you got to do, with your business and kind of make it personalized to you. But I think the fundamentals are still the same. And learning those fundamentals right off the bat, I think, really puts you forward in the process.
So if you listen to this as you're listening to this right now, and you're like, what is flight school? What is land flipping? What are these guys talking about? If you haven't already listened to the episodes we did with Mark Podolsky, we've done 2 different ones. I encourage you to go back. But what we're talking about is buying raw vacant land at a 25 to 30 cents on the dollar discount, and turning around and either selling it to another land investor or turning around and selling it to someone who wants the land, and creating a owner finance note, right? So let's talk about your experience. So you went through flight school, as you said, I kind of took the same thing. Like there's a total DIY here. Like Mark One has a toolkit that's really DIY, but if you want to, you can go find most of this information out there. It's just not organized, and that's kind of why we decided to go with flight school, is that we wanted to have a coach that can help us kind of walk us through that process so that we could do it. So you go through this 14-week process. Now what? What did you start doing? What sort of success were you having, if any?
So I started mailing. I think Scott Todd has us mail like the 3rd week. Start sending out 100 offer letters a week to the county that you decide. And we're talking about county research the first, and then we get our mail list, we start mailing.
Wait, so 1 second about that. So the key to this, I think, is interesting, is that you start taking action on building the business while you're in this training. The flight school is not just a training, it's actually making you take action, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
And how valuable would you say that was for you in getting off the ground?
Yeah, I think it was valuable because he's telling us exactly what we need to do, and I've always been good at following through when I know what to do. It's those times when you're like, oh, I don't know what about this, and you kind of hum-ha around, but if you know what to do, then you can take action and move forward. So that's what he had us do. We talked about county research, and showed us like what to look for, and the mail list, how to get that ready to go and start sending offers out.
So you started sending offers out in week 3. Talk to us about what happened after that. How long did it take for somebody to respond to you?
Oh, I think it took forever. I'm sending all these offer letters out, and like nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And so then I might get nervous, and like, am I pricing them wrong? Is this model, does it not work? What's going on? And Scott Todd says, well, wait 4 to 6 weeks before you start freaking out. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait that long.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden I started getting these calls and responses back. And the first deal I bought was a guy that had 3 properties. And then I bought them all, but he called me, and I remember being so nervous on the phone with him, trying to explain how to buy. And I'm like, I'm really not sure how I'm going to buy these things, these pieces of property. And I kind of walked him through it. I'll send you a deed and you sign it. Luckily, he was, cool with it, and he was just excited to sell them.
Yeah.
And I think it was the perfect first buyer for me because first seller. I think he was just a little bit more lenient and willing to work with me. But I remember being nervous on the phone, but now it's no big deal. You get used to it. Just practice makes perfect.
So you bought 3 properties at once. How long did it take you to sell one of those properties?
I think at first it took me, I think, till August. I think August was the first sale that I had.
So you bought them when?
About May.
May. Okay, yeah. So you had them for
several months.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Like, I know people are listening who's been listening to this. Be like, but what happens if you get stuck with them? So, like, was that going through your head at some point? You're like, oh crap, I figured out how to buy them, but now selling them's a new thing.
Yeah, that definitely went through my head because I was looking at these properties and I'm like, there's no roads to them. They're just sagebrush. Like, are you sure somebody is going to want these properties? And I was marketing. I was posting ads on Facebook, Craigslist, and all the things I was just trying. And there's like, here and there, there's a few responses like, hey, I'm interested in this, and then nothing.
Yeah.
Forever. And then all of a sudden there was this one kid that looked at his property and said, it's perfect. I want to go on a side hill and camp. I was like, perfect.
Yeah, you got it.
I told him there's no road to it. And he's like, oh, that's perfect. That's what I like. I'm like, all right, great. And then, he made the down payment. I put him on terms, and he's been a faithful monthly payer. So that just like blew me away because I don't know. I have no use for the property, but other people do, and they're out there.
All right, so that was one. That was the first one. So how many properties have you bought and sold since you started doing this back in May 2019?
So I bought 45 properties, and I've sold. Now I've sold about 35, 37. I have to look. There's a lot to keep track of. So
that's awesome though. But now there's 2 ways to sell them, right? You can sell them to another investor, you can sell them for cash, or you can sell them like you did that example to the kid that you sold on terms. So How many, do you have an idea of like percentage wise, how many people has just paid you cash versus how many people are financing them monthly?
So I think I've wholesaled about 10 of them for
Okay.
just, to other land investors. And
Just
then,
for cash in that case, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then on terms, I think I have one cash deal. It's the only cash deal I've had with just a, regular buyer. And the rest have all been terms deals. So I don't know what the percentage is on that, but it's not very high.
Okay, so walk somebody through that who's interested in the terms thing, because I think as we talk about on this show all the time, creating passive income, selling them on terms is one of the best ways to create that kind of ongoing income stream. Walk somebody through one, how does that work, and how do you even come up with the terms? Like, I think maybe just talk a little bit about that process.
Okay, so So coming up with the terms, I just want to make sure I'm having a 72% yield.
I'm sorry. I thought you said 72%.
Yeah, that's right. 72% yield.
Okay.
Man, that guy's greedy. I'll tell you that. I mean, 72.
Well, wait a second. Now he was listening to Dave Ramsey a second ago at 10 to 12, and now he's talking about 72. Right? You talking about the rule of 72? Your money doubles.
How things have changed.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, sorry. We get distracted with shiny object syndrome here. All right, so 72% is what you're trying to go after.
Yeah, and that includes time, how fast you could sell it and whatnot. What you're trying to sell within, like, I don't know, a month or 2 or 3 months. And so, but 72%, so that kind of helps me decide on what my monthly should be and how many months I want it to go for. And because I want to make sure I get my money back within a year and a half so I can, buy more land with it. So that's kind of how I set my terms up. But you got to play with the market. It's kind of what the market wants to. Sometimes they're excited about $100 a month, and sometimes you could sell them for $150 a month. It kind of depends, and I think I'm always testing the market. And sometimes I put higher prices and lower prices, and I don't know.
But I think the key I'm hearing is that you really have a lot of control over that process. It's not like you're stuck in one way or the other. So if you find the right buyer, they may be willing to give you a bigger down payment and less monthly, or vice versa. And you're still in control of that return, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's a really critical thing for people to understand about this process. So, all right. So I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate. So what's the worst thing that has happened when you set somebody up on terms? What's the worst thing that can happen?
Well, the most annoying thing is they don't sign the documents forever sometimes.
Yeah.
But even if, even
so
if
it's
they
just
don't,
hanging out there, basically. You've sent them the documents. It's just hanging out.
Yeah. What? Maybe a better question, Joey. Excuse him, Sid. He
Man.
sucks. He's a terrible interviewer.
But,
We're always having to try to coach him up around here. You give him any tips you have, by the way. You're doing excellent. What is the worst thing that has happened since you've been doing land flipping?
this one thing just happened recently. I bought a property from a lady that was a land investor, but she is no longer a land investor. And so I bought it and sold it. I sold it on wholesale. Anyway, and that was I think that was in September. And just last month, she called me up and said that she had made a mistake. She sold that property on terms to one of her buyers who had been paying on it for a long time. And she sold it to me. And so I had the deed, and then I sold it to another investor who held the deed. And so she's in a mess. I feel bad for her.
Oh, God.
But I gave her the number of the person I sold it to, and I'm hoping that he will work with her. But I don't know. I guess there's things that happen like that you gotta be careful on.
So she wasn't good at details. That's probably a reason she's out of the land selling business.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, but he who holds the deed holds the property. I'm not sure how that thing works any other way.
Yeah. Well, when you sell a property though, like you're holding the deed until they pay you off. So you just have a land contract with the person who bought it. So that's terrible. So the person thinks
Wow.
they're making payments on it. That's a really crazy deal, right?
So I think that was the craziest thing. It wasn't terrible for me, but I mean, it's kind of a good a good lesson learned that you need to be
Keep up with
organized.
yeah, keep up with your stuff. Like that's probably a minimum. That's kind of like somebody like selling a car to somebody on layaway and they're halfway through buying it and like somebody sells it off.
Yeah. Yep.
Oops.
But
Yeah.
I have had like concerns like about like getting properties stuck with me, and every time you're able to sell them
Yeah.
as long as you're buying right, as long as you look at your comps and you're buying right for a quarter on the dollar, quarter to
So
30 cents on the dollar.
what's the longest you've had to hold a piece of property so far?
Those were probably my first ones when I was just building up my marketing. It was those first, how many months was that? 5,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah, 3 to
5.
5, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and then but recently I'm able to sell them within a month to 2 months, pretty easy, pretty consistently. So
All right. So let's
Let's
talk
talk about
a little
time.
bit about what's that?
Let's talk about time. Like the time commitment that it took you, one, to get it up off the ground, and then now I would assume you're in more of like a maintenance
Yeah.
type
How,
of
how
mode.
much time are you spending in your business? So kind of going back from the start, you went through flight school kind of in the March, April area, right? You bought some properties in May. You sold your first ones in August. This is all 2019. Now we sit here, it's February, as we're recording this in February 2020. How much time are you spending in your land business every day? Because you still have a full-time job. So how much time does it require of you to just do the ongoing maintenance?
so I'm trying to spend as much time as I can in it, but the right now it's winter and construction's slow, so I take Fridays off to work on it. That's kind of like my job. So I spend most of the day on Friday, and I'm getting to where maybe I work 6 hours on Friday,
Yeah.
and then we go have fun with the family. Or so there's 6 hours, so maybe 10 to 15 hours a week. I would say would be pretty fair
Yeah.
on that.
And was it more than that when you first started, or less than that? Like, help us understand that.
It was more because I kind of treated it like a job while I was sitting in my recliner with my leg up in the air and just, I was like, okay, I'm going to work. I'm going to learn this land business. So I spend, 40 hours a week in it. And I had a huge learning curve. So I look back on that and I'm like, man, if I would have had known what I knew now, I would have been a lot more productive in that 40 hours than I was. But, I still took that time to learn. And so either way, I had to go through it. So I spent a lot of time up front because I was able to. And then as I went back to work, it's obviously been less. And then in the summer, it's a lot less. I think 10 hours if I'm lucky.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about. I want to get to two things before we wrap up, and I really appreciate you spending time with us today. One is you just mentioned something that made me think of the question: what is something that you wish you would have known? Something that you found out later that you just said, if I would have known that, I would have been a much more productive in that first 40 hours. What's one little nugget? Because I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, what's that thing I don't want to spend that extra hour,
Yeah.
5 hours or 40 hours doing that I don't have to? What's that one thing I need to know that could save me a bunch of time?
I'd say learn. I wish I would have just learned Airtable is a really, what's the word? A good
Tool.
piece of software
Yeah.
that you can use for automation. Zapier, I was good. Pipedrive, I use Pipedrive for my CRM. So I wish I would have just learned what I was going to use right at first, so I could just learn those technologies instead of going down all these different technology rabbit holes. So really like Airtable, Pipedrive, Zapier, and Mixmax for emailing. LG Pass, that's what the Land Geek, I guess Scott Todd and Mark kind of created for the keep the properties organized. So I wish I would have just learned those 4 things, or I don't know how many, but those things right at first instead of trying to learn all this other different technology, because there's so much out there. And I don't know, I just wish I would have stuck with those and became a master at them instead of trying to learn every little thing. And I don't know.
All the different options.
All right, so let's finish with this, because this is where I'm most excited to hear kind of how this business has changed the course or the direction of your life, right? So your wife just had your third child, a sweet little girl, and talk about the cash flows that are coming now from the deals that you have. If I was doing right with my math, roughly 11 of the 35 or 37 properties you've bought have been sold cash. That would leave the next 24 to 26 that is sold on terms. So talk about that cash flow that's coming in every month, and how is that going to potentially change the direction of the time that you and your family get to spend at home with kids?
Yeah. So my no income roughly is about 3,000 right now. And
3,000 a month.
3,000 a month. That's like principal. That's everything like coming back.
Right.
So I take half of that and like replenish my land fund to purchase more land. So about 1,500 coming back, but that's going to allow my wife to quit her job. Well, not totally quit, but be able to work only 6 days a week, or not a week. I always say that 6 days a month.
I was about to say, man, that's starting to sound more like my work schedule.
Going backwards. No, 6 days a month, and then and that's about half of what she has been doing. So her time's been cut in half, so she's able to stay at home with the kids more. And as we build this and continue to build our no income, she's obviously going to be able to quit if she wants. She may not, because she might want to have a break. She does like to be a nurse and do those things, so it's maybe a little break for her. But I mean, it's nice to have an option. Now we have an option to, do you want to work? No, and she doesn't have to work. So
what you just said right there, Sid, is what fires me up. Is that financial freedom means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and at the base of it, though, is having options, right? If you've never put in the work, if you've never invested in yourself, and I'm going to back it up to say, what's our process? Our process is to take control of our finances. If you had not stepped into a learning environment, being driven and saying, okay, I'm going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to watch this video. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I want to take control. I don't want to just stuff money somewhere and hope that it works out and defer life for the next 30 to 40 years. So you took control, and then you invested in yourself, right? You put in education. Those things were not free, right? I mean, going through flight school wasn't free. But what has it accomplished is it allowed you to pick that path because you were confident now because you had education. And now you're getting there faster, is what we always talk about on the show. And so talk to me about how that feels when you and your wife are talking about the future now versus 18 months ago, whenever you started this whole journey.
It feels a lot less stressful. Would be something, because I was always wanting my wife at home, but I'm just like, how am I going to do this? And it's exciting. Like I don't know where life will take us, in the future, but I mean, we could see it. We could see this land business working and providing a source of income for us, so that we can, be able to serve in our church more, or give back to others, spend more time with our family and our kids. And so it just gives us more options, and we don't have to worry, about money. We could just know it's coming in and not have to. If I don't feel like going and working, I guess we don't have to. It's just freedom. It really is.
Man, that's so cool. I don't think we could end on a better note than that one, Stallion.
Yeah, no
Sid, that's been great. Thank you for sharing. You're encouraging so many people that are listening to you right now to say, man, this is something that I want. And I'm just so excited for your family, and glad that you guys have that sweet little girl at home now, and your wife's going to be able to spend more time with them, and just can't wait to see the next thing that you guys are up to. So thank you for taking time and sharing with everybody today.
You bet. Thank you. It was fun.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you as always for listening. And if you want to join Sid on this journey, join community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. Not only can you get time to interact with Sid, we're going to do a live Q&A at some point and talk a little bit about the land flipping and kind of get to see some of this in action. But also you can listen to more podcasts, see the Q&A that we did with Mark Podolsky. And by the way, Joey, did you know that we actually have a little bit of a discount for the Land Geek in our community?
Yes, I am aware. And I'm
Yeah.
pumped about it.
So anyway, this is just a beauty of when you have great clients like Sid out there having testimonials. We get a little pull with Land Geek to offer this sort of thing. So man,
That's right.
please join the community at community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.